Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Midnight Cowboy, directed by John Schlesinger, The Truman Show by Peter Weir, The 40-Year-Old Version by Judd Apatow. We have newly released My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 by Nia Vardalos, and finally, The Nun II, directed by Michael Chase. It's going to be an awesome show, folks, so stay tuned and enjoy. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
It's going okay on my end. How was this week of movies for you?
Great, honestly. We were back to a little bit all over the place, but super enjoyable. Starting the Judd Apatow study, the writing study, which is great. Super excited for that. And yeah, it was awesome to watch some movies to buttress two clearly not great movies.
Yeah, that's what's funny about the episode is we've got three heavy hitters up front.
Yeah.
I really love this episode, honestly.
Yeah.
Even just like I was doing the newsletter and I was like, this is a good week.
Yeah.
This is a good week. It was a good, I watched The Truman Show and The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Kind of surprising. I didn't watch Midnight Cowboy. But I went for, Truman Show is so big and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I went for that. And then, we have these two. Yeah, the new releases are a little lackluster.
Yeah, like I said last week, folks, when it comes down to my opinion on some of these franchise deep dives, I think I'm going to do it what I'm going to be calling whenever cinematically necessary. And I don't think it was cinematically necessary to watch the homework of either of those franchises.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's too upset about that. Now, did you watch The Nun, though, the first one, when it came out?
I was originally kind of interested in The Nun. Never actually saw it, though. The Nun 1 was something that a visual designer that I follow from like the video game space worked on for some of the concepts. So it was on my radar, but it's part of that Conjuring cinematic universe where Annabelle comes from, where Curse La Llorona comes from, and it's just like, man, I think even with a little bit of buy-in to the stylings of the Nun 1, I never really got around to it.
Okay. All right, yeah, so I don't know. We'll see how they fare. But like I said, we've got three heavy hitters, and yeah, I love it. I think this is a great episode 99 ep. Let's jump right back and get into it right away.
Sure.
Let's jump back to 1969. It's a very big movie. This is Midnight Cowboy, directed by John Schlesinger.
Yes.
And it's got
a braver man than I. What's it going about that?
It's got a young Jon Voight. It's got Al Pacino.
No,
not Al Pacino. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Al Pacino's smaller doppelganger. Right. I guess they're probably both the same height.
And I think people know the name of this movie, I think. I don't think a lot of people have seen it. Like, I have never seen it before.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me.
Absolutely.
And it's a big name. I think it was well regarded and highly critically regarded. Mm-hmm. And shockingly, it was rated X.
Oh, wow.
Which really surprised me.
I didn't catch that.
In 1969.
It definitely makes sense.
Okay.
This is no
hold bar.
Yeah, no hold bar. Absolutely. And bold, I would say.
Okay.
These are some of the words that come to mind if I had to really just elevator pitch for Midnight Cowboy.
Yeah, so let's get into it a little bit. What's the setup of the film? It's an hour and 53, and how does it treat us?
Sure. Well, I was treated to a lot of short films this week, and I was really grateful for it because it was a little bit of a scramble this week. But Tom, flashback to our review for The Wild Bunch, great movie, of course.
Yep.
And I found myself picking and poking around the 42nd Academy Awards of 1970. Of course, while the snub of Wild Bunch was my critique, I lingered on that Oscars for a bit. That's an interesting Oscars show. Little did I know that one of the last performances from Fred Astaire was in that show, a video I've always loved.
Yeah.
He kind of does like some funk dancing, which is maybe not the best, but it is, one of his last on-screen performances. In addition, we also get the thunderous ovation for John Wayne's sole Oscar win. And honestly, a wonderful speech given as well. That is...
he is... a pro.
Yeah.
The dude's a pro.
He really, it's almost, at first when I was watching it, I was like, this is a little too polished, but no, he's just so smooth with it. Like, it was great.
A lot of people think that he shouldn't have really won for that, and he probably should have won for maybe some others in the past.
Yeah.
But this was around the time he was getting sick, and the theory is the Academy kind of thought like, oh no, what if John Wayne dies and he doesn't have an Oscar win?
Right, a true legend.
So he says in that speech, what if I would have known this, I would have put the patch on 30 years ago.
Put the eye patch on a long time ago. Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, folks who also got that newsletter, we put this in. It's in down in Hollywood Clickbait.
Yeah.
And it's just go to the full page of the Oscars. The videos are there. Fred Astaire is there. John Wayne's speech and John Voight as well.
Yes.
Who accepted for the director.
Yep, absolutely. And I was really down a total rabbit hole with this. I think 1969 was an incredibly stacked year with so many classic titles that I personally have never seen. But one film clenched both Best Picture and Best Director, so I needed to see what was the cream of the crop in such a stacked year. Midnight Cowboy is a criminal drama that holds no punches in showing the grime of society in the late 60s, specifically in Manhattan. And I mean, it's a grimy Manhattan that is shown. Joe Buck, played by a very young John Voight, again, like Glenn Close, one of those actors that I only know old John Voight.
Oh, you don't know young John Voight?
Yeah, I don't know. And this is obviously like his most iconic role.
I would almost...
Really?
Yeah. I mean, because you have to add in... Oh, my God. Deliverance, I would say.
Oh, true. Very true.
And that's in the 70s as well.
Yes, very true. Joe Buck is a country bumpkin looking to swim in much bigger waters than he was ever made for. He travels to New York City to get paid, hooking up with as many girls as possible, and is fed to a city of grifters much sharper than him. He teams up with Ratso, played by Dustin Hoffman. What do you guys say about Dustin Hoffman here? I mean, he really transforms in this role to like a scum of the earth, human rat
into
of
Ratso.
a man. Yeah, into the rat. Ratso kind of swindles his way into being his manager / pimp for the duration of the film. Though this is kind of like that summary maybe makes you think this is a fun, raunchy kind of hookup comedy. It is not. It is a very, very, I don't want to say dark. It's a gut shot film. It's really like, wow, it's not holding anything back. The film portrays Joe Buck as deeply traumatized by his upbringing. I honestly think, folks, one of the most interesting things this story does is create an immediate unease around why Joe Buck would suddenly want to pick up everything and become a gigolo. Psychologically, what's going on there? Sexually, what is going on there? And it's all rooted in this trauma that is kind of drip-fed to us. It's never really told 100%. This is not like a fun time, though Joe Buck may be this like naive, happy-go-lucky literal cowboy coming to New York City. There's something deeper there, and that's from the very get-go. He has these dream sequences, these nightmares sometimes that show a different story and a different motivation for why he's kind of whoring around.
I feel like that's more up your alley, I could almost imagine, where you put this in a different setting or different director's hands, and it's just like fish out of water jokes.
Yeah, basically.
It's PG. We have a PG movie now,
right?
And it's just funny because we have just classic New York City slicker, and a guy trying to be a cowboy in the city. But
exactly.
if we're trying to get you're a New York boy. Now, obviously, went around back then. But if we're in,
if I was, I don't know.
If they just threw us in it, and if like, no, we're going into the dark alleys of New York around this time and everything like that, I think play up to that.
And I think that's where this X rating that you mentioned makes perfect sense because It holds some punches when it comes to drugs, believe it or not. There's like one party scene, that's about it, which I feel was not a critique I had for the film, but I felt like it could have even gone further in addition to the very, very intense sexual tones to the film. This kind of dark outlook on the city and human nature, I mean, it's everywhere in the film. There is fun to be had, but it's not the priority of the film whatsoever.
Right, okay.
And while the story, I think, loses some steam in its focus towards the end, it's largely centered on broken characters finding companionship in a cold, cold world. That's the point of Midnight Cowboy. I think Dustin Hoffman's character hurts the story a bit for me, just personally. A little over halfway in, the plot throws us some curveballs to make Ratso equally, if not more, empathetic than Joe Buck. And the problem I found with myself is that I was so invested in the trauma of Voight's character, I naturally wanted the story arc to be exclusively around him, and it was just a bit disappointing that some stones were left unturned. I feel like in 69, you could see these stones being unturned as cinematic brilliance, honestly, in that the story is something that you have to kind of piece together among many pieces. It just really, I don't know, I feel like this movie would have been so much stronger if Ratso was just supporting. It really is a shared story, though. We can see this in Hoffman having actually top billing above Voight. And flash forward to the Oscars of the year, and both are nominated for lead actor, being beaten out by John Wayne. Yeah,
which is wild that they both got lead acting noms. Like that doesn't really happen anymore.
Right, and I think that's where that shows a little bit of the priorities of the story, that they really are both leads. Even though I felt the Voight side was much stronger, and I wanted to kind of see that more.
It felt like he really should have been the actual lead.
Yeah, especially Ratso's character kind of suffers from a mystery mental illness that is not AIDS. You know what I mean? You'd think it would be like AIDS or something like that, but it's 69.
It's 69, right.
So it's like he's smoking too many cigarettes, maybe, and it's just like, all right, and then he just becomes like a drag for Voight's character. It's just like, all right, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
But it really is both of their shows, and I'll be honest, and I'll say both. The bulk of the film didn't have me super gripped, but I was won over occasionally by some strong filmmaking. Dream sequences in this film are very impressive. Stylistically, they vary from light kind of wish fulfillment scenes to straight up seizure-inducing nightmares. So they're a little all over the place and a little surreal. What got me, though, is that when these dream sequences would come along, they're so well integrated. Perfect examples, Voight early on will just be looking at the richer parts of Manhattan, older ladies walking with dogs, and he's imagining going into their apartments and hooking up with them or getting them to agree to, hire him in some way. And the way it's edited and kind of clipped into just his normal perusing the city streets, it really, really interesting. I found it to be a fascinating way to kind of incorporate fantasies or daydreaming or something like that.
If you were impressed with it, it's the fact that it's 1969, and it's doing that is that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty impressive. One thing that was notable as far as in the industry goes. One thing too, the Wild Bunch was a whole different type of editing, kind of.
Yes,
and I don't think it held up all that great, in my opinion. Like, I understand that you got to start somewhere and you work upon things.
Yeah,
but I didn't love it. And what sounds like this was like high quality.
Yeah. And that's where, and I'll say this, in just a little bit. Again, I don't think I have any gripes with this winning Best Picture and Best Director. While I think I prefer Wild Bunch in a lot of ways, and just how much it got snubbed in categories, at the same time, this film is extremely bold and extremely ambitious in what it goes for. Honestly, the cinematography here is striking, folks. And for me, it felt ambitious to have these sequences and If anything, I wanted to see more of them, especially the ones that gave backstory to Buck, but maybe in not showing that, that's a little bit of the film's brilliance as well.
Interesting, yeah.
Keeping me wanting more and more of the interest into his backstory. So, but preference aside, folks, this is a bold film for 1969 and a little shocking for today. I stand by my opinions for the Wild Bunch review, but this film gets no hate from me for winning. Folks, if you enjoyed something like 2013's Dallas Buyers Club, or possibly even want to see this quote-unquote gut-shot depiction of the late 60s, give it a watch. We're going to go ahead and give Midnight Cowboy 1969 a 74.
Oh, okay, 74. I thought maybe it was going to reach a little bit higher than that, the way you were talking about it. What is it lacking, would you say? Just not enough main support character, not enough Jon Voight?
Yeah.
And
I think as well its dedication to showing the different walks of life and the different weirdos in Manhattan during 69.
Okay.
It's jarring, and it's a little bit all over the place.
Okay.
Obviously, that's kind of the shock that we need for Voight's character to get thrown into the deep end. That's what he wants. He wants to go to the big city. But I think for me, it was just like...
disconnects you a little bit.
Yeah.
74 is still a good score. So, okay. And the big question is, does John Wayne deserve the Oscar over those two?
Very tough. Very tough. As much as Ratso was annoying as a character, boy, Hoffman's acting.
You think
he's acting his little booty off.
better than Voight, even?
Yeah, I think so. Voight's good. Why I like the character and why I like the movie is all in the storytelling, not necessarily performance.
Okay.
So.
And then, is there any reason, just in backstory of that 1970s Oscar, why was John Schlesinger not there to receive Best Director?
That I don't know. Actually,
because Jon Voight then accepted the speech for him.
Yeah.
Or accepted the Oscar for him.
And looking into his filmography, not a director that I was like, oh, let me check out other things. He did Marathon Man.
Right, he goes on to
70s.
do Marathon Man, yeah.
But then definitely peters out quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay, all right, 74 for Midnight Cowboy. Very good, Vin. Let's keep it going. We're taking a big jump to 1998. We got two comedies here.
Yeah.
And we're starting the jump Apatow later, but let's go ahead and do The Truman Show, directed by Peter Weir. I think
technically 3 comedies with Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, what am I? Of course, that's right.
You might be hard pressed to call it a comedy at all. Maybe like this film as well.
Okay, so The Truman Show, it's still referenced today. People know it. People constantly say, "Oh, I feel like I'm living in a Truman Show" or something like that. It's so... I'm surprised that it was 98 and it's still kind of relatively culturally relevant.
Oh, absolutely.
Or it can easily have a rebirth. It always feels like it fits in today's society almost, which is the craziness that kind of goes on around us. And it's right before we actually have this onslaught of comedies that fit together, these Judd Apatow comedies.
Oh, sure, in the 2000s.
Where the buddy, they're all together with the Seth Rogans.
It's the open improv style that,
right.
that they're stitched together kind of comedies.
So, and it's another reason why the Truman Show kind of just really feels like it's on its own little island, and literally in its own little world.
Yep.
Like I said, I watched it. I'm excited to go have a little dialogue with you about it, but let's get into it. How did you like The Truman Show?
Well, I gotta say, I love this movie. I really have always loved this movie. I'll talk about in a little bit how we kind of came to adding this into the week. This is one of the seminal works from science fiction writer Andrew Niccol, coming 1 year after 1997's Gattaca, a diamond in the rough sci-fi for sure. Gattaca is pretty solid if you want to give it a watch. And while I think our director Peter Weir certainly has some chops for this project, this movie is all in the concept. It is just lightning in a bottle as far as the concept goes. Certainly, the execution of that concept and performances is what I think makes this film so good, but I feel the lightning in a bottle aspect is centered on the story itself and how kind of timeless and prophetic the science fiction is to it. So, especially coming out in 1998, which is important to keep in mind, folks, for anything that we talk about as far as reality TV, surveillance, and the more science fiction parts of the story.
It's funny, 25 years old, and sure, even some of the data tech on the screens or something like that, but it just has a freshness to it. That doesn't really go away. It's awesome.
Absolutely. This landed on a watch this week simply by catching a blind spot, folks. I said, hey, let's cover a classic that is rated but isn't necessarily on the website, and what do you know, it wasn't even rated on the on the database.
And we're going back years at that point. point
Yeah.
where you have not watched this critically before.
Yeah,
That's how long it's been.
That's the thing is, I think I have seen this maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, but I was just always assumed it was rated. So, I guess some of the problem that comes with 500 plus movies.
Yeah, I'm going to take a second to just explain that.
Sure.
Because we definitely have some new listeners since last we talked about it.
That's a good point.
So also, we have the couch days. So years and years ago, Vin was always the guy people would go to for film, talking about movies, things like that.
Talk my ear off.
We'd always have fun about bitching about Rotten Tomatoes. So one day we just kind of sat down. I just listed off like 50 movies, and we started an Excel sheet basically.
Yep.
And then every month, every other month, every 3 months, I would sit down with Vin, and he would actually write down just his scores.
Yep.
And then he would verbally talk about them. It was literally the podcast without microphones.
It really was.
And for years, we had piled up, I think, close to 600 films doing that. 600 films doing that.
Yep.
We now have an additional, basically, 500 that we have audio to. And I'm just trying to backfill, just get all that on the site, because it should be over 1,000 movies now on the site.
Yep.
It's not quite that much now, because they're just waiting for me to put them on.
And every week, we lose ground on the project because of 5 additional films.
So basically, folks, if you ever hear us reference the master list, or if we talk about the couch days or something like that, we're going back to that, where there is a list out there that has a lot of movies that we don't have audio to, but that Vin had actually taken the time to figure out a score. And that's why we kind of always say that Farron is consistent, because he's done movies we didn't realize were on the master list. We go back and look, and it's the same exact score.
Yeah,
or like one away from it.
Very true.
So
almost eerily.
I know,
in a lot of instances.
I love it. So that's all props to you. But anyway, that's if we're referencing that, that's what it goes back to.
Yeah.
But shockingly, not on there.
But it was a great pleasure watching this movie again, because I think it's easily my favorite Jim Carrey performance, and it's just one of those sci-fi stories that strikes so true to its message that it really only rings out loud in modern day. The Truman Show is yet another movie in recent episodes that honestly I think is a bit beyond genre. My best stab at it is kind of like a comedic psychological thriller, or maybe comedic psychological drama. It's like,
okay, sure,
or a comedic gaslighting film. Or no.
I think all those and above.
Yeah. But definitely beyond a genre, which is a mark, honestly, of a great film. I like originality. This concept is so electric, coming out in 1998. The story introduces us to Truman Burbank, the embodiment of a suburban domestic man who begins to have suspicions that his reality around him is not real life. Couldn't be more correct, as in the very first moments of the film, we see that Truman is the subject of a bold reality TV show that studies his entire life for TV. I want to be extra careful in how I tread around spoilers here, because the first time watching experience, I think, is incredible for this film.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't watched this in forever, so it was nice coming back to it a little bit and picking up on things. It was definitely good seeing it as more of a critical eye.
Sure.
Yeah, it is something that's nice for the person to experience.
Exactly. I think the premise of Truman's life being on TV is peeled back so masterfully and is so well executed in showing the audience the true reality of what's going on, sometimes the borderline horrific reality of what's going on. We as watchers of the movie are taken on the same emotional ride, from wonderment to disgust. And in many ways, the film becomes meta because we are just another viewer of The Truman Show and what would be happening in these episodes that the reality TV would be watching, basically. Truman really is the entire production of the show. And I can't, once again, just like the genre, I can't really think of a film that embodies that so perfectly. The concept is just taken to such an extreme.
It's Truman against everybody, which is a phenomenal concept.
Yeah. And again, how that is unpeeled, how that is realized, whether you're a first-time watcher or you're a repeat watcher of this film, is just, I feel like the pacing there is just immaculate. This is also, an hour 47?
Yeah, what is it, an hour? Yeah, it's an hour and 43.
Yeah.
And that's one major point I had to make about it was the pacing. To the point where I was thinking about, like, what would I cut? And it's just, I don't think you could. I think the movie could be 10, 15 minutes longer, even potentially.
Sure, especially when you get to that third act. It's like, you think it's going to get a little bit longer. And then...
and I was even thinking make the first act even longer. Because they start shelling out things to you relatively quick.
Pretty quick.
Or I should say they start shelling things out to Truman relatively quick.
Yeah.
So they even could have made that a little bit longer. But man, the movie moves.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. And I knew that's something you would appreciate about it.
It's just a good example of all killer, no filler, and something that we talk about that, when we, either of us, comment on, we can cut this, we can trim a couple minutes there, that's not just to needlessly poke at a film or pigeonhole, an accomplishment. No. It really is, what is the most important moments of this story.
It's an absolute feeling.
Yeah.
When you walk away from a film and you go, that could have been a little bit shorter. It just happens that we've been watching a lot of films, and it turns out a lot of films might be able to be a little bit shorter.
Yeah. And certainly that's accentuated by the bulk of how many movies we're watching.
Right.
But,
right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, but man,
but with this, it goes, and then when it's over, it's like it did it. I walked away being like, damn. Yeah.
That's so great. It's so great. I would say the reason why I would call this sci-fi, which why don't I say this? Do you disagree with calling it a sci-fi?
I do disagree with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you?
I would say comedic psychological thriller. I think it's much more there than sci-fi.
Sure. Okay.
I don't think there's, because then I would just say fiction, not science fiction in any way.
True. I guess science fiction is maybe pushing it a little bit.
I think when I was doing some stuff on it, even fantasy, I could even go with.
Sure.
I think fantasy would work as well.
That's
better
true.
than sci-fi.
Not
but
fantasy,
let's get into
swords and magic, but just a fantasy.
Exactly.
Of modern society.
Right. Just like you have princess fantasies or something like that. Here is just I don't even know.
Right.
I'm interested to hear why you were kind of had this in your head as sci-fi.
Well, if you look at Nicole's other work, Andrew Nichols, his other work is exclusively science fiction. I feel like this fits in the same way because there is a dystopian quality to the world that would welcome this concept in open arms. Truman might be chipper and corny as the peak of 50s Americana, but the advertising, the business, and the surveillance of the Truman Show tells a different story. It tells a dystopian world where viewers of the Truman Show are mindlessly consuming what they're seeing on screen.
Right.
Not only that, what is allowed in this production and the scale of this production is a little dystopian. I mean, this movie came out in 1998 before the wave of reality TV with the 2000s, and I just feel like it hits the nail on the head. Every aspect around the cultural impact of the Truman Show has shades of truth in it, and topics such as privacy or fanaticism, I thought was an interesting kind of through line of the show. Or of the film, are explored without slowing the film down. I think so easily you could get in the weeds of, what happens legally, what happens, what is happening outside of Truman's world, and straight up, I just feel like this is like the first Black Mirror episode. This is Black Mirror before Black Mirror.
God! Well, it is. That's for sure. Actually,
yeah.
That is for sure.
and that's where I think I come from with the science fiction element of it. Because it's I wouldn't call it a Twilight Zone. Certainly in that Black Mirror is just Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. I feel like I would describe it as a first Black Mirror episode because technology is so key to how is the story working.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
To me, that doesn't necessarily, that's the criteria of science fiction though for me.
Sure.
Really, I think that's dystopian that's dystopian fiction.
Yeah.
Is how I look at
it. Sure.
So.
Okay. I like that though. Mm-hmm. Watching this film, I would say the brilliance of this is you encounter these problems and these themes and these plot threads naturally. It's not put in your face. It's about Truman, and it's about kind of a very simple hero's journey for Truman, but all of this is kind of packed into the background, much like when we did the Verhoeven study, much like when we talked about Brazil, that things are just in the background.
Right.
And give storytelling elements and give theming. So,
yeah, definitely it awards the keen eye, it awards the person paying attention a little bit more, and that's always nice. Yeah. But you're right to nothing spoon-fed. It's just all there for you. Yeah. It is all there.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I would say without a doubt, though, why I am so in love with this film is the cinematography. I think is a masterpiece.
Okay.
Since the movie simulates the real live stream of the show, camera shots are constantly shown in hidden, everyday objects. I would say half the fun of the film is seeing what shots will be used next, A favorite of mine being two-way mirrors in his radio, and I think one was the pencil sharpener, and the neighbor has a trash can that he's always carrying.
It's like so obvious,
it's like
too.
on his shoulder. Yeah. And that's where I think this film has a rewatchability. This film has a reward for those going back to it, and I feel like that as well. Not something that I can explore with every film that we cover, but at least for this, I can appreciate so much going back and spotting new things with it.
And you will spot through. You watch this 3 times, you're going to pick up on some things as you go. It's not like it's the most complicated story. It is kind of fun and it's just unraveling and everything like that. But there are things there to see and to catch and to keep on watching. It has a rewatchability to it, which is great.
Yeah.
It's funny because even watching it, you're halfway through and then you're thinking in this scene, okay, where's the camera going to be? It's fun to guess then, or where you think it's going to be. Yeah.
I absolutely love that as Truman acts more erratically, the shots suffer. We get straight up bad shots in this film, but it's justified because it's in the universe of Truman acting outside of his parameters, outside of his track, if you will. So, and that little nuance there is I mean, like I said, I think this is all in the concept, but that's where I want to give credit to Weir as a director, because that's really thinking outside of the box and maybe even suffering his own project. He doesn't want to use bad shots.
It's an absolute dedication to the idea.
Yeah.
And it's nice.
Yeah.
It totally comes through more and more in the film.
Yeah, and it's in the concept. I think, honestly, this is falling into a must-watch for me because of how many audience members, or how it makes the audience, the viewers of this film, aware of filming techniques in a production. I think in a lot of ways this could be a contender for a gateway drug for anyone looking to appreciate film craft more because of how it makes you aware of these filming techniques. And easily, this is just one of the most unique films to come out of the 90s, and the 90s is no stranger to experimental stuff, obviously auteurs, standout directors, and putting out a lot of quality. Even if you disagree with some of the spins and some of my interpretation, I feel like the film weaves a story that has human nature, morbid curiosity, and artistic boundaries as significant threads, but never shoveled down your throat. These are things left for the viewer to discover, and as you're watching it, a fun comedy with Jim Carrey acting insane. All of this is packaged up, and Jim Carrey's finest overacting, and I can't help but absolutely adore this film, folks. It's a big boy alert. We're going to go again and give The Truman Show an 87.
Wow, an 87.
I think it's a huge movie. I think, again, there's just so much. I could talk a whole hour about this film. I had to really limit myself quite a bit.
This is huge news.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say again for people who started listening again, once when you're above an 85% mark, we kind of say you're in the must-watches. These are any audience, anything you should see before you die and everything like that. 87 is a huge score.
And that's where I think it cracks some of that, is because, again, there's elements here that I think could create a film buff out of viewing this
really
film.
Works for you.
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
This is the same kind of energy coming off of Ferris Bueller, I would say.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That there's almost nothing to critique. From time to performance to concept to execution. I mean, it's perfect.
So right about the 90s as well, where you have so many big things happening, so many big names coming up, so many big films, so many copycats or things taken from those big films also in the 90s.
Yeah.
And this is totally on an island by its own.
Yeah.
And that was really refreshing. I can't say it's my favorite Jim Carrey performance.
Okay.
I don't think it goes to...
You gotta give me some... just out of morbid curiosity, what's the Jim radar?
Well, I think...
Grinch?
Growing up, definitely not. Definitely not. So, 98, I was too young to see this new.
Oh, sure,
it was always just in the culture.
Yeah.
And then even but when I was young, the reruns and the rewatching of Ace Ventura, because that's great when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
And the first Jim Carrey I was able to really see was probably... It wasn't even Liar Liar. That was redos. It was probably Bruce Almighty.
Oh,
when I got a true in the movie theories experience.
Yeah.
But then I would say, what's the one where he plays? Oh my gosh! And Obi-Wan Kenobi is in it.
Oh,
not Eternal, whatever the Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
But
not
it's
that
not.
one.
I don't think it's that one.
Okay,
it's the one where he plays the being married to.
I Love You, Philip Morris.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think his performance in that is pretty solid.
That is pretty,
because he
yeah.
plays so many different characters because he has to play con man basically throughout his whole life.
And so you get just like a classic Jim Carrey, just putting on his craziness and
Yes,
and his
not
variety.
liar craziness.
Yeah.
Also, another Jim Carrey movie I love though is Fun with Dick and Jane. I think it's a phenomenal movie.
The housing crisis film.
So a very enjoyable Jim Carrey. I definitely liked it. I have to say, walking away from this, I wasn't overly electric about it.
Sure.
I'm not jumping to a two shoes even, which kind of surprises me. The movie ended, and my thoughts were like, that was quick, that was snappy, and overall, that was a very cute original story.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed watching it.
And the originality there is where my comment comes from about the 90s,
Oh, absolutely. I almost think it could be longer for it to make it feel like a more impactful film for me personally. I feel like it went by so quick that when the end comes, it is a little bit like, oh, that was nice. That was cute.
Yeah.
And snappy and quick.
Yep.
But I wish, because it's still referenced today, I thought I was going to be walking around the next day being like, damn, that was a phenomenal movie. And I didn't quite have
didn't
that.
linger with you.
It didn't. It just
Interesting.
had to be like, that was a really nice movie. That was really good. So I'm not going to give it a two shoes. I'm not quite there on it, but
Sure.
I can't say I disagree in any way. I can't look at this and say it was a bad movie in any way. I'm just not overly stoked.
You gotta start giving some two shoes though.
I know, but
you gotta, if you're spending the time. Let's get them on there.
Yeah, my ratio movies are going up. So I've
Sure.
been trying to watch more and more. But at the same time, I need to. If there's one rule I stick to, it's movies I care about, whether it be from love, hate, or surprises.
Okay.
That's why a lot of the shoes are either high or low because there's either hate or love for it.
Right. The middle nuances of shoes or how many shoes is a little difficult.
So this, I just think I'm very happy to have it as your 87, and I'd love to see that. And I think most people really should at least give it a watch out there.
Yeah. It is something that I feel like needs to be under your belt,
Right.
And again, just for filmmaking techniques.
And now, see, it's easy for me with the shoes because really it's a more of a me thing where it's like, I think people should watch this. Boys, that's like a two shoe, one lace, two shoes, two laces. At the same time, to me, this isn't a two shoe, two lace, I don't think, or anything like that. So, but anyway, that's where I land on it. Very, very positive, just not overwhelmingly excited.
Yeah.
But an 87 is phenomenal. I can't wait to put that in the must watches.
Yeah.
Not a bad year. We have some good movies this year that we've been watching.
Oh yeah, for
Old
sure.
movies, unfortunately.
Old movies, but listen, I'll take the good. I think overall, this year is shaping up much stronger than last year, though. As far as like
I'm not
actual
surprised by
good
that
movies coming out this year. So
Yeah. Well, last year was still pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was like 280s or something like that.
It was rough in the 80s, actually. Yeah, it was pretty rough. All right, Vince. So let's go ahead. This is finally starting our Judd Apatow. So we're gonna have some excited people that we got some comedies going on.
Right.
So we're gonna start with Judd Apatow, the 40-year-old virgin. This is 2005. Steve Carell and the usual suspects in a film like this.
Yeah.
It's definitely. Is it Apatow's first or one of?
One of his first, because he
Okay.
did Freaks and Geeks in the late 90s, and then he was on the production team for like Anchorman and stuff like that, even just a few years
Oh my God,
before this.
Anchorman was 04.
Yeah.
That's right. So oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
was a year. This was still one of the early ones, though, at least in my
Absolutely.
head and how I approach
And
it.
early for Carell. I mean, this is same year as The Office started, so.
I think Office started late, maybe 04.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay,
this is
okay.
right after first season of Office, maybe,
Yeah.
somewhere in second season. But yeah, 40-year-old virgin. Let's get into it. Judd Apatow, how was the film?
Well, folks, it only took me another year to dive into another comedy writing or even be in the mood for comedy. So, but I am happy to announce that we are starting this writing study, and it is a writing study specifically. Apatow is without a doubt one of the strongest talents and the strongest voices in comedy of the 2000s, but it's largely because of how much he lets his cast stand out on their own. I can only speak for this film now, but I personally feel the success of the comedy in his films comes from bench strength in so many solid performances, and it will be something that we see in the 2010s of his format, of his editing, and how he stitches together from long riff takes and picks the best and picks the cream of the crop. Something that is honestly ripped off shamelessly in the 2010s by countless comedies trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to note that, like our Zucker-Abrams study, I don't think these are going to be super long reviews. I think if the comedy works, I want to kind of avoid over-explaining. You know what I mean? I don't think that's high value.
Yeah.
You know, and almost like a spoiler, if a joke is really good, I don't want to spend too much time on it because you got to have to experience it.
You have to experience it. Not only that, what you might find a great joke doesn't hit for somebody else.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
vice versa. What somebody else hits, maybe not for you. Yeah. And that's our big thing with comedy.
Right, you'd hit the nail on the head of why I don't like reviewing comedies. But
not that. I mean, all reviews are subjective to you and to who the reviewer is. But with comedy, there's something specific about it where it's like, well, you either like it or you don't like it.
Right,
kind of a deal.
Right. Exactly. If anything, I was worried about that with Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was just like, well, I'm not a mom. I'm not a...
No reason to get too worried about that.
Yeah, luckily it was easy enough to call heads or tails on Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Right. So. But with that said, our outline for the films, for those that want to pay attention at home, the weeks might be broken up here as we go into October. We have this in 2005, Knocked Up in 2007. We'll be covering then Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story in the same year.
Is that Judd Apatow?
Yeah.
That's not
That's writing.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Also, Judd Apatow did Fun with Dick and Jane, but it's only a screenplay adaptation.
Okay.
So I wanted to go for the original works. Pineapple Express in 2008, so the stoners can be happy. Mm-hmm. And finally, Funny People in 2009. And that's... I really enjoy that we can cap off the writing study with that because Funny People is, one, a film that constantly people have told me will turn my opinion on Adam Sandler. A challenge that has been failed time after time, year after year. And as well, it's definitely a turn into his later career in the 2010s where he's doing like This Is 40 and like more kind of the emotional driven comedies that he'll take on.
Did he do the other Will Ferrell ones? Like, did he do Step Brothers?
No, he didn't do
or Talladega?
I always thought he did those movies, but nope.
Okay.
No.
Man, the 2000,
producer
there was such a
credit,
good
but...
15-year stretch of films.
Yeah.
Like from 03 to 15 maybe is when it really starts to die out, maybe 18.
Yep.
Just a great stretch. Funny People, I needed to just Google and look up again. I forgot that this existed.
Yeah.
And it's funny. You were getting hit up about this one.
More so just like throughout my entire life.
Okay.
Just because I've always very publicly hated Adam Sandler. So.
Right.
But
that's a good list, though. That's a good Apatow list.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that. Our story centers on a knockoff Best Buy, a Radio Shack, Circuit City, whatever you want to call it, with a group of coworkers finding out one of them is a virgin and rallying behind him getting laid at any cost. This is a rom-com for sure, but one structured around kind of like dumb guy humor. Mm-hmm, yeah. I feel like so much is spent with this like four squad of boys that it's really... it's mostly guy humor, even though this kind of rom-com structure could be all right, really, for anyone that likes those. Paul Rudd, Romany Malco, and Seth Rogen have huge supporting roles in this and are all excellent, but Steve Carell playing Andy is honestly, I mean, has to be one of his most iconic roles. I mean, I don't know if Foxcatcher, if people even remember that movie.
I freaking loved him in Foxcatcher. I just cut Foxcatcher like 3 times. And he was nominated for that one.
Yeah,
Are you that impressed with Steve Carell in this one?
Not impressed. I just feel like it's such, and it goes back to what I always say. Iconic doesn't necessarily mean greatest of all time.
Sure. Okay.
I just feel like it's iconic, especially him going into the office as kind of this socially awkward.
Right.
It's classic Carell. And 40-year-old version definitely captures that perfectly.
That's good. Yeah, definitely.
I wouldn't call it just a guy comedy, though, since a lot of it falls into rom-com stereotypical trappings. I don't think that's necessarily bad, and I'll say again later on, I think if in ways, and maybe you can chime in on this, do you feel that this is a parody in how raunchy it is of those rom-coms in the late 90s, the Tom Hanks style rom-com, it's
a new era. It's a new era coming off the 90s.
Yeah, post-Hitch, if you will.
Yeah, Hitch 2005 as well.
Right.
It's definitely, we're not PG-13 anymore.
Right.
This is rated R rom-com for sure. And it deserves its own spot there. There's a lot that came after this now that also belong in there. So, yes, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's
It's a parody of those tropes, kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The plot takes it slow. We chill a lot in the store. That gives us kind of a natural platform to improv with. We're really just living a day in the life of the 40-year-old virgin, which, folks, it might seem too early to call it, but I think Apatow's trademark can clearly be seen in how the comedy is edited together in these kind of laid-back sketches.
Yeah.
These laid-back sketches where they're just chilling in front of the TV section of the store.
Dialogue heavy, and you can almost feel improv as well, very improv heavy, which he's always good at doing, Apatow. The question is, well, how is it playing for you? I'm very excited to hear really your overall take on this.
I think it's mostly all, oddly enough, I like the moments when there are more than 4 people on the scene and riffing, and you can feel that they're just kind of like bouncing around, and that was probably like a 2-hour, if not more, on set for just that scene.
Right.
And then stitching together. I think when the film gets more structured and it's something, I don't know, where Carell's on his own or something like that, or these rom-com aspects that come in, that's where the film falls off a little bit for me.
Okay. So you like okay, interesting.
I like the riffing of it, mainly because you get this huge variety. You get this bench strength of so many comedic talents in this film. I mean, it's really crazy to look at this cast and be like, wow. I mean,
all the way back to 2005.
Yeah. I think how these scenes are stitched together, the setting is mundane enough to have these actors just riff and the best moments stitched together for the final film. And like I said, folks, in the beginning, this style of comedy runs rampant in the early 2000s as copycats. I won't go into another breakdown list.
Get called out online.
Yeah, but it really is constant. And I think Apatow brings something special here that his copycats do not have. And I hope to nail down what exactly is specific to Apatow and his writing and his comedy structure that the other films don't have, basically.
Okay.
So I would say so many scenes are just dedicated to bringing guest talent into the movie as well. Kevin Hart, Elizabeth Banks, Jonah Hill. They all are super early in their careers.
Very much so.
And it just feels like they just got sections of the film dedicated to them. Kevin Hart specifically. I'm not saying that Apatow knew what they were going to do or anything like that, or how big they were going to be.
You love when that happens in film, though. Going all the way back to John Wayne, which we all know that scene in Stagecoach. Well, you and I know that scene in Stagecoach. But it is cool to see. It's cool to go back to almost 20 years ago and see. It was just like, wow. And look at him now. Like, that was like, what a cool thing to look back on that. And be like, he got his own little scene here. You're totally right with the Jonah Hill and everything like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they work so well. I mean, these are not only are these guest spot scenes, welcome to see if you're rewatching this or even watching it for the first time. Let's say even watching it back in 2005. But when it comes down to it, is like they are some of the best scenes of the movie as well.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yes. I don't think I didn't laugh out loud once watching the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would say that's my most enjoyable. Kevin Hart was pretty good, cracking a smile, and I would say probably the most much I smiled, if I ever did give an out loud chuckle, was probably with Jonah Hill.
In the store.
Just so young. Yeah.
The eBay store.
Great little character.
Yeah. And he really is so young, too.
Do you think that the film is hindered by the fact of how much we have seen this over and over? This is classic TBS rerun. This is classic. True. It was such a big comedy in its day, and so talked about that comedy specifically. It can't be. I don't think it can ever, no matter how good of a comedy, could ever really be a Godfather Part 2, where it's on or something like that. You're soaked into it, and it's still just as good. It's got things it's still surprising you with. I barely ever watched this film. I might have watched it once all the way through, but I don't even know if I did. It might have just been bits and pieces.
Interesting.
And yet feel like I've seen the whole movie.
Yeah.
Watching it again, now I'm not. The comedy is so difficult, I think, for it to hit a second time in a certain way that a great script or drama can.
Sure.
And that was hindering my enjoyment. I like the film just fine. I like the Truman Show better. It's really tough for me, though. It was tough for me to be wowed. That's all.
Sure.
And maybe I'm coming off a little bit not as hot on this as well.
Interesting. I kind of just figured you would be a fan of these type of movies, but I didn't know with this one specifically. I totally get what you're saying, though, because if anything, the downside of these mundane scenes in the Best Buy store, or so many scenes where it's just clearly just riffing. I feel like they all do blend together. So if you've seen one little bit, you've kind of seen them all.
That's
honestly.
the thing with being with the crew.
Yeah.
And with the Paul Rudds and just the whole crew. Yeah. Steve Carell's the outlier. He goes on and just does his own thing, really.
Yeah.
Very
but that's
true.
also where the rom-com steps in, and I was like, the trappings, the stereotypical trappings of that.
See, that felt a little bit fresh to me because it's just like, okay, I'm watching a movie at least.
Okay.
Where we're with the bros and they're being bros. It's
like
just
first
like
20. It's
typical
like
Seth Rogen joke. Paul Rudd being Paul Rudd. Yes, he just says he's like a little puzzle piece. You can just always plug him in there. And it was so formulaic after now basically 2 decades of this Judd Apatowian type comedy that now going back and watching these, I feel like they're going to suffer a little bit, at least for me. To be honest with you, it's just like, okay, how is Vin going to go and do that? For me, it's, if I give it shoes, I don't give it shoes, no one cares. But for you having to rate it, like we always say, we're watching the here and now. We're watching the 2023. There's a lot of Judd Apatow commentary, and there's a lot of films where we had all these same guys on screen having almost the exact same kind of dialogue. A little, I was like, okay, there goes Seth Rogen again being Seth Rogen. You know what I mean? So there's,
I think the standout elements. I mean, are they on 100% the whole time? No, by the nature of how this comedy is created. But at the same time, I feel like there are the real standout scenes where those are the backbones of the film.
Okay.
And each one has one of them, I really think. I feel like every character has at least one scene, as even the supporting roles of the other the other employees that he works with. Everyone has at least one pretty good one dedicated to them. And I feel like that's a mark of quality.
I think that's fair, and I think going in the Judd Apatow one, that's a good thing to kind of note, and we can kind of look at that. Who has the scene, or how many scenes are given out to each individual people that's hitting? Because I think we'll also find then there's going to be some that just overall are hitting better. Yeah. I'm expecting better than the 40-Year-Old Virgin going forward a little bit, to be honest with you.
I think so, too. Yeah, I think it's, if anything, my feeling was like, this was solid, but definitely felt like a first run, if you will. And that's not good to say for Apatow, because he did Freaks and Geeks. I mean, it was not the first run for him, but it feels like
blowout comedy that people are talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, I feel like I would feel the same way about this film as if I returned to the very first Hangover film, that the shock, the first time experience has worn off now. And if anything, you hit the nail on the head. Why I want to aim away from comedies, because it's so hard to stand by my belief of watching in the here and now with comedy.
But there is a quality thing. Yeah. So for instance, I know how I feel about Walk Hard. And boy, I didn't know you were doing Walk Hard. Yeah. I'm excited to hear that. Yeah. I think it's a problem I have with this crew for so many movies being just this crew. Yeah. Because I can go back a year before, 2 years before, 2003. Yeah. I love Daddy Daycare. And I would watch Daddy Daycare and then in 2004, Dodgeball.
Oh, sure.
I think Dodgeball for me has a much more rewatchability aspect to it than a 40-year-old version
as well, especially Dodgeball.
Right. And even though Vince Vaughn might be acting like Vince Vaughn, I feel like he can be fresh in a certain way. Where there is no freshness in my eyes, at least, for Rogen, for Rudd, and for kind of a Judd Apatow properties.
Interesting. I think what got me there with Rogen and Rudd specifically is just how young they were. I think I enjoyed it more. I've never seen them, but there was the camp movies. I'm forgetting the name of it. But Paul Rudd's in those. Wet Hot American Summer. That I hear great things about, and I think they're younger. The shtick is a little, Seth Rogen, perfect example. The stoner shtick is a little bit more fresh. It's also not directly in your face, like he's just smoking weed randomly in a scene, rather than him being like,
the scene, right?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously we will switch our tune when we get to Pineapple Express, but we'll go from there. But like I did with the Zucker Abrams study, I do want to highlight some standout scenes, because I can't explain where this movie works without, kind of giving a shout out a little bit. I think as far as repping it for Carell in 2005, the body wax scene is honestly an all-time great.
Wow, it still hits for you like that, huh?
I was watching and I was just like, obviously I've seen it 1,000 times. Even not watching this film in its entirety, it's just like it's something that you've seen. But man, it's just It really is such a great performance for him. And you can, that's also another one where you can just clearly see how the scene was stitched together. Everyone kind of has their moments of just like throwing out one-liners, and it doesn't maybe even feel natural, but it works because it's so ridiculous. The "How I Know You're Gay" scene between Seth and Paul was, I honestly, I think super solid. Like a really good improv scene. I think Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd together as well is a magic mix that I don't know how often we see them directly together, but that scene, I don't know. That's where the guy humor was really hitting for me, because they're just playing video games. It doesn't even make sense. They're like playing Mortal Kombat on like an N64 controller or something. But it was just like, it's such a good guy humor scene. And I would say, as far as running gags go, I don't know if there will be the heights of the running gags that we saw with the Zucker Abrams movie, but putting the pussy on the pedestal is just, I was just dying every time.
That was pretty good, yeah.
I was just dying every time with that. It was just a great running joke. But listen, folks, I think this is a strong start on this one. I can safely say I experienced the comedy version of Razzle Dazzle with this film. That end credit sequence was pretty fantastic. I've never seen this film in its entirety.
Okay.
And the end credit sequence really got me. It was just like a last moment that really won me over. And so it was like comedy Razzle Dazzle, honestly.
Okay.
Just for how jarring it is.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think the rom-com aspect shackle this movie, and shackle a pretty good story otherwise that kind of just feels played out in parts. But if anything, like I said in the beginning, I think this could be seen as a parody of 90s rom-coms. I personally have high hopes for this study, and this being one of his most iconic roles, I don't think it's going to do you wrong. We're going to go ahead and give the 40-year-old version a 68.
Okay, 68. So, okay, I was kind of thinking we'd put in the 70s, but 68, not a bad score, pretty good movie.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. I think it fits right here, actually.
And I think also, not that I'm swaying or giving ratings on a curve or anything like that. I feel like I need to give some runway for what I know I love Knocked Up for, and what I know I love Dewey Cox for. So I feel like there's more room for those comedies to become, in the higher ratings.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that we're doing them too, like going through.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll spark even more. Like I said, we have quite the 15-year stretch, even off of Apatow.
Yeah.
Just like people just killing it for some of these.
Sure.
So I love it. Okay, 68, pretty good score for 40-year-old virgin, folks. All right, Vin. So we're going to go ahead and go into our donation segment before we get into our two new movies. Now, we have two producers for this week, which is awesome. So we're going to step up. We have friends of the show, really. Friends of the show at this point.
They're all friends of the show. If you're a producer, you're a friend of the show.
And we have repeat producers here. So Brandon Beebe came in, and he's the first to do the donation of he's buying you a movie ticket, Ben.
Oh, okay.
So the national average of the movie ticket last year was $11.75. That's what Brandon donated. So Brandon wrote, Vinny, since other sites pay for movie critics to leave positive reviews, how much to bump up those Sonic movies? Just wanted to get in some bashing, and is why I love listening to you guys. No amount of money will change Vinny's mind. Which, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so true, too. So for folks who don't know, there was a story that broke this week. Vulture uncovered the story where a PR firm went out and bought for $50 a pop lower-level critics on Rotten Tomatoes. And basically, it was to bolster up a film, some Ophelia film and Daisy Ridley was in it. It was like a nothing movie.
I'm honestly surprised I didn't hear about it.
So the scores were, I think the original score of the film was at a 46. It got bumped up to a 62 because these people, the lower end critics, again, that Rotten Tomatoes went out and higher, you had some people change their bad scores into good scores, which is just ridiculous. But the thing is, once when you get above 60% Rotten Tomatoes, it's like a fresh movie.
Yep.
And then when did you know that then as soon as it hits that, IFC announces that they're picking up the film for distribution. So the biggest thing was it's one PR firm and it's paying low-level critics, but still, the system is so easy to game, as well as what is your... If we ever get so big where we're hiring other people, there's going to be such a process of vetting people, making sure that they have your same mindset, because this is, at the end of the day, the daily ratings.
Sure,
you know what I mean? And I just think you get so big for your bridges, you get so corporate, which Rotten Tomatoes is, and that the way to game the system is so easy. It's unbelievable. They are owned 25% from Warner Bros. Discovery, 75% owned from NBC Universal.
Yeah.
How does that not influence things? Those are big studios that pump out films, and we're supposed to think that things are on the up and up. Things are totally honest. The scores that you're getting, it's
even
ridiculous.
Just ethics-wise, I mean, how are you not swayed from something coming out and it's part of your team? How are you not swayed in some way like that?
Right, exactly.
It's really why we believe in no advertising on the podcast as well, and we want to be producer-run because it's not about the product, it's about the reception of the product.
Right,
and,
exactly.
It's about all of you.
And that's what we're all about here, folks. That's why I say fair, honest, consistent. It's one guy doing the reviews. He watches films, he knows films, and it's just the fact of...
Until I die in the theater. As the music cuts out.
The funny thing is, it's foolproof, though, really.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is that because you're the guy giving the ratings, they're going to naturally be consistent.
Yeah.
And not only that, if people are consistently disagreeing with you on, let's say, science fiction movies, that's still... Even though you're disagreeing, it's still a marker to go by.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I'm not saying that you have to see things my way, but by being so ingrained in my beliefs and my opinions of these films, you have a marker. You have a marker to judge your own opinions on the film.
Exactly. So, Brandon, we thank you, one, for the $11.75, bought a movie ticket for the week. Appreciate that. But also, thanks for bringing that story up. It gives us a chance to have a little bit of dialogue about it. And anytime we can, nothing like patting our own selves on the back here.
We also talked about it in the past, but as far as dream of dreams, if we're able to really grow, actually having specific delegates for content, having maybe a TV type of specialist. If everyone wants me to cover TV, I don't want to cover TV.
TV or video games. Someone mentioned to me. I mean, if we could grow in any way, again, we want to be around for a while.
Yeah.
So who knows how big and great we can get, but we always want to stay true to our commitment here.
Yeah.
Fair, honest, consistent. We always want people to stop by here, listen to the reviews, or go on the site and know what they have here, know what they're dealing with, and know that it's true and honest. So, Brandon, thank you so much for that. You are a co-executive producer. Is that what you're saying? Co-executive producer?
Associate, maybe?
Associate executive producer? Yes, associate executive producer. We have another friend of the show coming back. So Matt D is the executive producer. Matt D coming in, and he donated 2001 pennies. So he gave us a Space Odyssey donation. So
wonderful.
Matt D wrote a big note in here. Who do you think his knives are out on this one? I feel like I've been in the hot seat lately, maybe. But
all right. I've been previewed to some of the gathering storm of this, so I'm very excited. I have not heard this yet, folks.
So we haven't heard from Matt D in a while, and Matt writes, Vin. Here it is. The moment you surely knew was coming as soon as you scored these two films. I mean, something inside of you must have been telling you they were wrong. I realize you hate score comparisons, but in this case, it could not be avoided. Someone had to do it, and I certainly raise my hand.
Oh, man.
We have two recent DCEU films, which is DC Expanded Universe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
DC Expanded Universe films, both released after the reboot announcement and both clearly impacted by the pivot. One takes this pivot and decides to tell a largely self-contained boilerplate story. The story and performances are boring, the plot is forgettable, the CGI is bad, but par for the course for today's superhero films. But there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's a resolution. There are themes.
There's structure.
It's perfectly fine as a type of generic kids film in the way that 1995's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is.
Oh, wow.
Now, the second film...
Good comparison.
The second looks the pivot in the face and decides to pick up a bunch of film off the ground, tape it together, and call it a movie. It opens with an action sequence that would be too outrageous for a superhero spoof movie and doesn't get better from there. The CGI finds new frontiers of bad. Every character looks like Gumby had a love child with the year 2005. The characterizations on screen are outlandish and wildly inconsistent. Whole personalities change depending on the scene. The entire logic of the core plot point of the film is nonsense. If you were to watch this film disconnected from the DCEU, it would be total gibberish. If you try to watch it as some sort of conclusion to the DCEU, or even continuation of it, it's even more confusing. You scored the second movie 20 points higher than the first. How? Did you watch The Flash, enter the Speed Force, and go back to when you watched Shazam 2 and mix up the scores? This injustice cannot be ignored. Will you publicly commit here and now to rewatching and rescoring these two very bad and very long movies in an effort to make this right? So that's
Amazing.
Okay, well, he took his knives out on you on that one.
Listen, we've been
I'm
asking.
unscathed, baby. Let's come out clean on that one. Come out clean.
Tommy's coming out with the shoes. Well, listen, as I have said on our end of year wrap up, there's usually one movie a year that I'm like,
regret.
I don't know. I have regrets. I have reviewer remorse, if you will.
Okay.
Last year was Nope, and largely for a better score. And while this year is not done yet, and I think there is plenty to unfold, I think Flash is definitely one of those that it would be much, much lower. I think, listen, I don't know if I want to give the commitment because then I got to watch the movie again.
I don't know. I mean, let's be honest. There had to be... I disagree with you disagreeing with your Nope.
Oh, really?
I say don't touch it.
Okay.
As far as these two, there's no way you're bringing Shazam up, right?
No.
So what the real story is why is the Flash
so
Flash
high.
right?
Yeah.
Why is the Flash so
Why
high?
is the Flash above Avatar 2? Why is the Flash above
Which, by the way,
Mutiny?
it's a 46% only.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not,
I'm not saying the film's good, but
right, a 46 does not say a good film.
Yeah.
But Matt D is wondering how is it not in the 20s? How is Shazam so low?
well, and this is where I got a little bit of a preview from Matt on this. I think what it boils down to is that predictability is something that I had no patience for. I had no attention span for Shazam 2. As bad and as fumbled, and I really mean fumbled, as Flash was, there was it was Flashpoint. It was the unique story. It was the quintessential Flash story being put on screen. It was like this.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't actually hate Ezra Miller as the Flash,
right? I enjoyed a little bit of the emotional beats of this.
Right.
Now there are. It's a Frankenstein's monster of a film, though.
The CGI is bad. I mean, you definitely crapped on this film.
To the point that some of the social media fodder has been chopping up that review, me shitting on the movie. So, folks, you can check out that on Instagram and the like.
I'll tell you what, there's not many scores that you might think that you have to redo or that you regret or something like that, which is pretty good.
It really is one a year. I'm not even saying that in an arrogant way. Like, it is one a year that it's just like, oh, the one that got away. So I think, I don't know. Here's the answer, Matt D. I don't want to revisit The Flash just because it was such a bad movie and I don't want to watch it again. But at the same time, you have my commitment is that if I am going to re-review something and rescore something, it gets a full additional
I love
watch.
how this comes right after I just patted ourselves on the back at how Farron is consistent.
But I think if I'm going to rescore something, I got to give it a fair shake. And the reason why I say that is that a lot of the times how I'm coming across must-watches is specifically to watches.
Okay.
So there's additional consideration put there.
Now, I'll say this even. If that ever were to happen, or rewatch it, or you actually rewatch something and realize something's wrong here, we need to change it.
Yep.
I'll tell all the listeners right now, we will never just do it quietly.
No.
We'll come on the show.
Yeah.
We will do another review. We'll even take some notes from the first one and everything like that. We'll make it right.
Yeah.
And explain why the changes are happening like that. Again, it's not going to be often.
Yeah.
And even the greats, Roger Ebert, again, came out with a book about some of his biggest ratings and some of, like, a lot of the ratings he's done. And then he failed to mention the entire time that he ended up changing a lot of his ratings, actually.
Wow.
Movies in the past that he gave, like, 1.5, 2 stars, and then retroactively gave it 4 stars and just managed not to tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
So if that ever happens, folks, in the future, we will be honest about it and everything like
Yeah.
that. I want to make a comment, though.
Okay.
Listen, I'm with you every week.
Yep.
I'm in person with you every week when we do this podcast.
Yep.
You really did not like Shazam 2 for multiple reasons.
Yep.
Okay? And you had a natural feeling towards the film. When you watched Flash, you had a natural feeling to the film. And as bad as some of those parts were, like the CGI, like some of the other characters, there were good elements that brought it up to a 46.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be so quick to take that back. As mad as Matt D about it is, and we're having fun, but I don't know. I have to stick up for Vin a little bit here, Matt, because
he's coming to my rescue.
Well, no, it's just there is a natural feeling to you watching these films.
Yeah.
You put that down; those go in your notes right away. It's really difficult to sit here months later from The Flash, and even more months later after Shazam 2, because I feel like if we were to go back and listen to those reviews back and back, there might not be as much loss that you think is there. Like the whole one that got away. I don't necessarily know.
Which you said you would disagree with the Nope, and
yeah, you act like your Nope was so harsh. And
no, yeah,
I don't see that.
And it's from my perspective as well. That's probably it's probably blown out a little bit when I think back on it.
Yeah, so
just in the same way that, in the logic of actually fully rewatching the movie before touching a score again, it has to be real. It has to be. I have to really put thought and consideration
and genuine feelings,
right? Exactly.
And sometimes you walk away. Listen, we're done over 1,000 of these. Like I said, over 500 audio. Sometimes also you're gonna feel a way about a movie that some people just can't quite understand.
Sure,
and maybe most of us don't understand it.
Right.
But you're human, and we just have to accept that.
Right.
Maybe that'll be a fun category at the end of the review special, and the year special too.
I'll tell you what, I am super curious what custom things, because we just covered so many franchises, so much bullshit. Like,
but maybe something like this could go on. Now, Matt, I'm going to say right now, you made some good points.
Yes. I love the breakdown of the Power
note
Rangers.
Was hilarious.
Yeah.
Excellent, well thought out note, Matt. It was fun. I read it a few times over too. So I don't know. Really good note. Really great. He's always on us.
He really is.
Just thank you so much for your donation. You're executive producer of episode 99. Brandon Beebe, you are associate executive producer of 99. You guys you have been around since the very beginning, though, the both of these guys.
Yes,
thank you so much for coming in here as we approach our 100 and just coming in and you're giving us value. You're showing us the value that you're getting for this on top of the value that you always showed in the past. So we appreciate it so much that you guys continue to support us. It's huge. For those of you listening who are kind of wondering what's going on, what this segment is all of a sudden, this is the producer segment. And just like how I said that Matt and Brandon are producers, anyone who donates to the show, anybody who goes ahead and send us some money on the show, you are now a legit producer. Yeah. You're actually helping produce. You're putting funds into the coffers. You are help producing. You're adding content. Both Brandon and Matt D, great content added. Okay, great notes to make here, and we're opening up a dialogue with those who help produce. It's just a great connection with all of you guys who really enjoy listening and everything like that. The value that Matt and Brandon are getting is because that's the idea. This is called the value for value model. We didn't invent it, but we're going off of it. Which Vin and I host the podcast every week. We have the website to go along with it. We have the newsletter that comes out every Tuesday morning. Are you enjoying it? Are you watching your own movies? Are you into movies more now than what you were before you were listening? That's value to you. That's value in your pocket. We ask you, if you could, to go to thedailyratings.com and send some value back in our pocket. You go to the donations tab, whether it be on the top right on the website or just right there on mobile. It's just down a bit on the homepage. Click the donate button. Matt did a one-time, which is the Space Odyssey, 2001 pennies. Yep. Brandon did a one-time, which is donate or buy Vin a movie ticket. There's also the value for value button there. And that means you can plug in whatever number you want. Whatever value you're getting from our products here for what we're providing, you go ahead, send it in, along with a note. We're going to read it right here. Whether it be critiques like Matt D, whether it be a big thanks from Brandon, or whether it be whatever. You want to ask about TV, you want to talk about something completely different, ask us about questions about life or this or whatever. You're going to take the time to produce, to send us cash. It means so much to us, and we're going to read it right here and address that on the podcast.
We've been poking the bear for critiques. So, all things considered, Matt D did critiques with love. We're still waiting on just the actual hate. Pay to play, basically, to get us to read hateful comments.
And hey, if you just want to send us $3, you can get your hate in. We appreciate that.
This was the training's wheels on this one. It was very thought out, very eloquent. So I'm waiting for the the true vitriol of the internet to come through on some of my hot takes.
Folks, next week is our 100th episode, and we sure hope that we have hundreds more, but it does mark something special. It marks us around the 500 movie that's going on that we have audio to that's on the site. It also marks almost 2 years or 2 years worth of content. We're growing. We think the podcast is getting better. More and more people are listening, and we thank you all so much. We'll have some more dialogue about next week, but if you
Champagne?
Maybe champagne.
Ooh, a little tipsy.
But if you are enjoying the work, if you're enjoying the daily ratings, like I said, if you're finding valuable, our website isn't slowed down by a bunch of ads that's on your site or pop-ups, or you need to subscribe, or we're not going to sit here and pitch you underwear or, I don't know, food services or mattresses or whatever. The whole idea is it's very pure. It's so about the movies. It's about the films.
Exactly.
And it's great. Been doing this for the past 99 episodes. We hope you've been enjoying it. If you can, tell somebody about it. And even more so, if you could, you go to thedailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab, and just show us some of the value that you're getting. We appreciate you all so much, and we're excited next week for our Hundy episode. Don't forget, the Hundy on the Hundy.
I was wondering if it was going to come through.
And by the way, since $100, and that's why we do it like this, there's no paywalls here. $100 to you is way different from this person to that person to that person. $100 to this guy might be $5 to this person, and that's why it's just like, it's whatever you want. So give us a Hundy, give us a Hundy nickels, give us a Hundy dimes, give us a Hundy quarter, whatever you want. It's so much fun. We're going to have a great Hundy episode next week. But with that, okay, Matt D,
Nichols.
Executive producer. Brandon, thank you so much. Associate executive producer. You guys are awesome. You continue to be producers of the Daily Ratings. Thank you so, so much. We absolutely love you. Okay, so let's keep on going here. Vin, we are in the newly released, I think this is the film we've all been dying to hear about all year. This is My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, directed by Nia Vardalos.
Vardalos. Yep. Vardalos.
Let's get into it. How was your theater watching experience? How was the film? It was an hour and 32.
Oh boy, talk about short.
Let's get into it.
Folks, I just would like to say, though I'm not doing the series deep dive on these two, let's just be honest, real trash movies, I'm not holding back. I've done my homework. I've done my research. These are not lower quality just because I didn't watch the summer reading on this. So, folks, this is an interesting production story, and one worth paying attention to, regardless of the fact that I would say no one should ever see this movie. This one was written, directed, and starring Nia Vardalos. She is an actress. She has been with the franchise from the very beginning. So, listen, if I get nervous when a director-actor combo comes up, boy, was I not prepared for this 3-part juggling act. I mean, Nia Vardalos has only recently adopted this director role, however. She is both the lead actress and sole writer for the trilogy, but stepped up one more level for this final one, most likely because probably no one really wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
The first one was directed by the TV production veteran Joel Zwick, and the second, Big Fat Greek Wedding, or BFGW, as we'll refer to, was directed by the relative rookie Kirk Jones. But nothing, and I mean nothing, folks, could prepare me for how messy this film would be with a brand new director who already has a colossal responsibility on our shoulders. I mean, let me just dial it back a little bit. I'm empathetic for Nia. It's too much. Yeah. It's too much, girl. Like, I get it. The writing these, starring these are clearly her baby. There is passion there.
Right.
There's passion in the story she wants to tell. It is so fumbled. It's, my God.
And you think it's just because she's so busy, because it's writing, directing,
much.
And acting.
Unfortunately, this one is plainly bad because of the directing. The stitching, the structure, the pacing of this film, all of the bones, if you will, of the film do not work even relatively.
Wow. Okay.
They're real bad.
Boy.
As far as the setup here, we return with the Portocalos family in a big 90s style vacation flick. That, I think, is the closest thing I can use to describe this movie, not for quality, but just for structure. Explained by our lead herself, the first BFGW was about family expectations and late blooming in love. The second reboot, several years later, was about how those family expectations shackled her new growing family and fighting to keep traditions alive. In our third bout with the Portocalos, they are bringing the whole family to the motherland, traveling to Greece, and largely it's a rewash of let's keep tradition alive, which I guess could be the whole theme for the trilogy. It's kind of asinine that it is a trilogy at all. The tone of the film is pretty sickeningly sweet, with many conflicts resolving themselves mere seconds after being introduced on screen. Just when you think something is going to add some drama or add a little bit of a wrinkle to the plot. Yeah, believe me, even the happiest of comedies need a little bit of conflict. We gotta kind of stay in the game a little bit. I mean this, seconds, milliseconds sometimes they're resolved after being introduced. It is unreal. Don't get me wrong, I expected this to be a feel-good comedy. This is alongside probably a new wave of these kind of nationalistic comedies coming out. Let me tell you, wow, did this not have any ride to it at all? There's no ride to this film.
It's just presented to you in just the worst way.
Right.
It's just right there in your face, and it's also not done well.
Yeah, that lack of conflict. I mean, this could have been a slideshow. This could have been a TV spinoff. The movie is not the right format for this.
I was going to say TV for this.
Yeah. Yep. And if anything, if the goal, no shame in this, is to just further bank on clearly a successful franchise for Nia and clearly her baby. Again, I am empathetic that I didn't, this 3-part juggling act. I'm not rooting for her to fail. That's props, but it's just too much for anyone props. And too much for a nonsense story, cash grab. This whole film, speaking of Sonic, this whole film plays out like a travel advertisement for Greece. Oh man, is there some adverts in this film? And I guess, girls got to get it funded some way. So that's how it probably
couldn't
happened.
even figure out the budget.
Really?
Well, because I had to put it on the newsletter what the budget was, because it was like third best this week or something like that.
Yeah.
Don't even know what it is.
Right.
There's like an estimated maybe 16, something like that.
Shot
maybe
on
18.
a black site. But the amount of shots that just linger on Greek companies or services, and services specifically, they're almost designed as puff pieces for how competent the Greek travel agency is, or travel economy is. All of it is captured clearly by a B-team production on this film. And boy, is the editing from scene to scene just so sloppy and so disjointed. I mean, the film feels like a checklist of shots rather than a cohesive movie, a cohesive story even. I mean, this is really bad. and I cannot stress enough, folks. I mean, if anything, watching this, I was like, I kind of want to watch the first one just to give it a shot.
Well, the first one was huge. I'll just say, it came out 20 years ago now. It came out in 2002.
Right.
It had a $5 million budget, and it made $370.
Right.
So
cold hit.
No wonder why there was a second one for sure. But you're milking it. You're really milking it.
And this is milked dry. The cow is dead.
Yeah.
The cow hasn't been alive for a while. Maybe the cow was dead by the second one as well. So, boy, I mean, we want to talk about comedy not working. Wow, Tom,
that bad.
Does the comedy fall short on this? I need to stress that the style of ethnic jokes that fill this script work just fine. Like any of these type of movies. For instance, we had this very year the Italian-American charged movie about my father that came out, and I'm told is largely passable. There was a South Korean one as well that came out. We're seeing comedies already on the backbeat, but if they're coming back, they're kind of coming back for these kind of national groups.
That Italian one, that's a Maniscalco one, and
yes,
De Niro.
And De Niro.
Yeah.
And then I believe the South Korean one was it was that party one. I think it was called Joyride or something like that.
Yeah, everything everywhere all at once. Yeah.
Well, no. Yeah. You're gonna poke MacD. You're gonna poke the bear. But I'm sorry. For something that bills itself as a comedy, the comedic timing in this is god awful. I mean, it was outright painful to sit through jokes in this film and for how bland and blatantly unfunny they are. And I really mean unfunny. My theater was sprinkled with several groups of moms, and I don't think there was a single snicker out of any of them.
Did you go alone with this?
No, I went with my mom.
Okay.
I was like, I need someone to balance my opinion a little bit. I turned to my mom halfway through. She goes, not working. Not working. She's become harsher on critics on reviewing the films than me.
If you're ever sick one week, I'll have to bring her in. Get her on the other side of the table.
Mama Daly.
Yeah.
Mama Daly's reviews.
But wasn't working in the theater. Wasn't working for anybody.
No, and clearly for the mega fans coming out for this.
Sure,
one,
absolutely.
This is a fan film. That's another way to kind of see this. Yeah. Wow. Just like not funny jokes. There's running jokes where a character says, "Oh, that's Greek. That's Greek," and it's like. It just dies every time. It dies on the vine. There's just so much, too, that it feels like scenes are disjointed. I mean, Christ, if there's anything I can give praise to Apatow as far as like stitching together the comedy is found in the edit.
Sure.
Boy, did they need someone in the editing booth on this one to find what comedy really worked.
Right.
This area where editing rears its ugly head, it's because the movie is cut almost like a TV sitcom, and that's where I kind of come into make this a TV revival. I feel like this does much better in that type of space.
Yeah, it's totally being picked up by like Peacock or something like that too.
Yeah. And even just digestible as a streaming type of story.
Yeah.
There's countless of these type of revival type of stories. I don't know why Full House is coming to mind, but these revival sitcoms.
Oddly enough, they're all doing bad too as well.
Yeah, right. Because maybe there's a reason why,
right.
you end these things, But shots will hang on so many pointless, small jokes. I mean, small, like crumbs, baby.
Little
baby jokes. Wrong part of the Mediterranean, Tom. But
your hand gesture was just bringing me to Mozzarella.
Wrong side, but
little botzel.
Well, let me tell you, I mean, like it hangs expecting this uproar of laughter. It hangs on these scenes, giving a chance for the theater to laugh. Like a Marvel, if you will, or something. Like there's a small gap, there's a breath to give audience reaction, and
nothing.
Where I have such a problem with it is paired on nothing. Like these are throwaway jokes. These are like baby's first jokes, and
she wrote the last two.
She wrote them all. This is
or she?
No, Soul. This is her franchise, which I mean. First movie, I would say colossal, great.
That's
right to star in it, and it's your own idea, and clearly
it's a hit,
right?
Like and it's a true hit.
It's such a true type of story to her upbringing and her family and everything like that. That's where I kind of wanted to watch the first one because I was like, boy, I want to give this girl something. Like,
right. She's doing a bad job. She's doing a bad job.
It's a bad job. It was just too much. The juggling act killed this thing. The film and performances, they just lack any comedic timing whatsoever. The awkward timing is shown perfectly in the brother character played by Luis Mandylor. Mandylor?
Yeah.
Mandylor?
Mandalore, sure.
The Mandalorian. And he just cracks brutally simple zingers that would even be in bad taste for a sitcom 20 years old. It's like her writing has not evolved. And I can't say that 100% because I haven't I didn't do the homework, so I don't get to really entrench myself in that opinion. But boy, I mean, these are old for pre Seinfeld jokes. I mean, they are just the lowest hanging fruit. They're on the ground rotting, basically. So there's just simply no rhythm on the delivery to these jokes, and what is there is just so by the books, made me question if they were jokes at all, honestly. That's where I turned to my mom, and it's just not working.
You know that the first one not only was hugely financially successful, it was nominated for an Oscar for the screenplay or for the writing.
Because it's unique.
For her writing, though.
Right. It's I feel like that first one could be inspired. A really inspired story for how true it's coming to her experiences and in life and her family and whatnot. Here, it's just, man, I felt the rinse repeat without even knowing what they were rinse and repeating, basically. So
It was a TV series too, by the way.
Oh, really?
After the first one came out, it's called My Big Fat Greek Life. Does that ring any bells? She co-wrote it as well.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't catch that.
Talking about milking it, Jesus.
Well, I mean, I kind of don't blame her.
Well, it made that much money,
right? And it's what you do, and it's her baby. But man, yeah, too much. The cow's dead. Tom, this is without a doubt one of the worst movies I saw all year. This is up there with Magic Mike 3.
Nefarious,
right? Oh, sure. I tried to get that out of my mind. I strongly feel that this 3-part juggling act for Nia was a poison pill for the movie and sucks for something that is so clearly a personal project. I really feel sad by this one. I feel sad in a way that even not knowing Nia is just like, oh, I'm sorry it was so bad. It was really bad though. In no way did I feel it necessary to watch the first two, but like I said, I almost wanted to just give that first film a shot, just at a better chance of my hanging opinion. But for this third BFGW though, it is a hard pass and a steer clear, folks. We are going to go ahead and give My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 an 18.
Yes. I thank God. I'm so happy we got low scores coming in like this. I want low scores. Well, last year we had like that bad superhero movie episode. So now we get like 4 or 5 terrible scores.
Yeah, we had Samaritan too.
18, just a good old natural 18%.
And a good case example
Boy,
of
Matt D is. I can hear the keyboard typing already. Wow.
Yeah. That's going to be the comparison. Flash and My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3.
I'm sorry you suffered through it.
Honestly, it was so bad, it was easy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, in a way, it was a sigh because it was like, fuck, I'm going to have to really work now. Like, I have to prove why this movie's bad. But it proved it on its own.
Yeah.
I would put that movie in front of anyone and say, tell me this is good.
So what was the feeling of going back, listening to the soundtrack and writing the notes for the film?
That's part of the advertising spend. This has a lot of licensed Greek music, which obviously authentic. They are going to Greece.
Yeah. Maybe it was just for the vacation for her.
Right. Maybe it's an Adam Sandler move.
Right. The Adams, exactly.
Yeah.
We talked about that last week with Equalizer 3.
Right.
Denzel, Rome, 2 months. Let's go.
I'm telling you, tax breaks.
Another one in you?
Everyone needs these tax breaks. They need to go international.
Boy.
So
18% on My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Okay.
One last thing
Lovely,
is in just the same way that I find kind of cases for certain scores. Equalizer 1 being a 48. I felt it in my bones.
Yep.
In this one, why it's sub 20s is that we really have like significant structural failures in the movie itself. Like the skeleton of the movie doesn't work, the comedy doesn't work, the editing doesn't work. Like it's bad.
Man, I freaking love it. I love it. It almost makes me want to watch it, honestly.
I know.
18%. Okay, Vin. All right. Well, I mean, that right there is all said there, folks. So we'll move on here. Let's just move on. Again, another week, another horror film.
He's so sick of it.
Number 1 at the box office. And did quite well over the weekend, like overseas, for how many limited theaters it was in.
Interesting.
Look, this is The Nun II. Like I said, it knocked off The Equalizer. It's number 1 at the box office. Barbie is finally number 5 slot.
How is that possible? Yeah.
So The Nun II, let's just get into a little bit, set the film up for us.
Sure.
And how was it?
Well, the Nun franchise spawned as a spin-off of the Conjuring series, folks, which we discussed during our Insidious episode alongside my favorite punching bag, director James Wan.
Of course.
We'll come back with James Wan one last time this year, maybe more. Who knows? Who knows?
As long as we don't have to deal with Patrick Wilson, we'll be all right.
Oh, boy, yeah.
We'll survive.
Check the end credits, post-credits scene on this goddamn horror movie that has a post-credits with Patrick Wilson. So
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh, spoiler alert. Sorry, I'm giving that one away for Wilson. We'll return one more time with Juan, hopefully not more, but for Aquaman before the year's done. Apparently DC completely abandoning marketing for Aquaman 2. So
who cares?
Yeah, honestly. I personally haven't seen seen any of the films in the CCU, Conjuring Cinematic Universe. I don't know if they talk about it like that, but not a single one, folks. Not the Annabelle creepy doll spinoffs, not the La Llorona movie, and definitely not the first Nun. Michael Shaves is our director here, helming the last three movies in this franchise. And while I could have done a series deep dive to catch all the shout-outs in this film and see all the connective tissue of the evil of this universe, I really just did not want to bother. Like I said in our last episode, I'm going to pull back, and in the beginning of this episode, I'm going to pull back on some of watching this back catalog for franchises because it's crushing my soul. it's not good.
Well, I know that. Sometimes, like you said, I think going forward, when it's felt that it's necessary, yes.
Cinematically necessary. That could be story, that could be continuity, things like that.
And oftentimes, people aren't going to go back and watch the old stuff. Sometimes people just walk in and just go into it for what it is.
I think that's absolutely the case for these horror movies. It's a date movie, It's
right. Let's go get spooked. Let's go get spooked. I mean,
exactly.
Sure, you do have a bit of an insidious cult, the whole Conjuring cult, a little bit, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the homework isn't always going to be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. In the Nun II, we follow nuns in a nun school, haunted by the nun, who is a spectral nightmare demon who preys upon nuns. All right, I'll try better than that. We pick up again with Sister Irene, played by Tasia Farminga. Sorry, Tasia. Maybe we could try with a different stage name. Farminga? I don't know. Semi-recently recovering from her run-in with the demon nun Valak, played by Bonnie Aarons. My quick note with Bonnie Aarons is that certainly... I love kind of studying iconic horror monsters and the actors that fill them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of interesting stuff on Freddy Krueger and stuff like that. The actors behind the monster. I'll give her some credit, but I feel like she's kind of snubbed in her own movie of being the monster a little bit. So if anything, kind of wanted to see more Bonnie because she's got some interesting horror aesthetics, and how bony her face is and how imposing her silhouette is.
Okay.
Sister Irene is taking on a new sister under her wing, who is having a bit of a crisis of faith, and both embark on a journey to see what is causing a string of grisly murders. Folks, it is just a very plain movie. The setup of the horror gives us a simple plot that puts our main character in investigation mode, only for them to return to trouble back home while they're away. I want to say that this is slightly better than Pope's Exorcist, simply because it doesn't try to do comedy, among all things. And we don't have Chub Russell Crowe giving a very bad Italian accent. But the package was just so bland and so predictable, I wondered which film honestly will age better. I think, if anything, Pope's Exorcist might age better just because it has more character to it.
Wow.
So
that's quite shocking.
Yeah. This is seriously boilerplate stuff, though, as far as the script. What little story is built on in the first film, nothing significant is added to it here. We have one returning character. We have a little bit of a implied history, obviously, with where her dealings with Valak as this demon nun comes from. It's just, I feel like even for fans, this wasn't even meant for fans. This was just like, yep, we got to pump out another horror slot.
Wow, okay.
And James Wan being an absolute machine behind the scenes. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah. He's kind of like in production role now.
Yeah,
he's not doesn't have his fingers in writing or anything like that.
I don't think writing. It's just production, but in the sense that he's a series creator.
Right. Yeah.
Much like the Saw franchise, Wan steps away from it, but always has a play behind the scenes.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, and what am I saying? Of course we'll return with Saw 10 is coming out. Oh, my God. I'm realizing it right now. We get some interesting atmospheric horror from time to time. Old churches and French streets give the film more character, honestly, than it deserves. Spaces are able to transform due to the delusions and visions the nun creates. This lets some scenes become a bit surreal, which I was excited to see. There's a pretty cool scene where there's this magazine newsstand that all the magazines flip into the silhouette of the nun. That's really really the main scare mechanism of, the nun just showing a silhouette and then jump scare, of course. And I would love to extend the praise, honestly, beyond that. But unfortunately, so little is done with the actual setting, both in France and also the time period, that, I wish there was more. I wish there was more maybe done with some accents or some dialect. People talk like modern day, which kind of took me out of the setting.
We're set in what time period again?
I think it's like 1953.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I wish there was more, but there's not. But it's heavy lifting for the horror that is ultimately just jump scares. The movie's style of jump scare is something that I like to call the hello reveal, or in other acceptable names is the who's there horror. The scene sets up a creepy shot. Characters call out some beckoning to the scare itself, and only when the tension settles do we get the jump scare. Preference aside, folks, I just wish we got some more variety in the film, because every scare boils down to this. Like I said, the nun's a cool design. She's got this like triangle thing on her. I feel like a lot of cool surreal horror could have been done with it. In her stalking. And yes, she appears in the background of some shots, a la Insidious. It's just like so, everything just boils down to character beckons the scare, tension settles, gets the scare. That is
cookie
the
cutter.
Yeah.
Is this just classic Conjuring cookie cutter? The Conjuring universe?
Those Conjuring movies, the big difference is that they're rated R. The Insidious movies, they're rated PG-13. So I'm hoping that there's maybe more for the Conjuring to...
Don't forget the Nun... Well, this is rated R.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm hoping in the better movies of the franchise...
I see, okay.
that there would be more to love, but I don't know. Wilson be damned.
It just, very, very cookie cutter and very unimaginative.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would be nice that these horror guys, these James Wans or the Blums, right? Let's try to reimagine yourselves a little bit. Let's come back and try to do something new, do something fresh.
Yep.
But the problem is, they seem, because they're so cheap to make, they are going to continue to pump out and pump out and pump out.
Exactly. And who could argue with the business of it?
Right, exactly. And what's crazy is there is a cult following.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, even though the box office the past weekend wasn't electric, they still made over $30 million for opening weekend.
Absolutely.
Which for a low budget horror film, it's like, that's all they need.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to hate on it too much just because I don't know. I don't think there was an expectation that this was going to rise as cream of the crop.
Right.
For
anyone,
whether it's 2023 being a standout year for horror. Or the Conjuring cinematic universe. I just feel like, I don't know. I think most of all where I was disappointing is that the movie holds back a lot of kills, which was extremely disappointing to me, if anything, on the back, Tom, of this rated R rating.
Sure.
Valak, this demon nun. Also, Valak is going to be my next D&D character, probably.
Cool name. It's a very cool name.
That's a great name. She might be intimidating on screen. Like I say, I like the aesthetics of it. I think in the right hands, it could be really, really cool. Maybe even take it in like a cosmic direction. But there is just little follow-through on making us feel the fear. The nun herself, I didn't find to be scary, and yeah, it's a good silhouette to recognize in the background, but on screen is hardly more than clown makeup. Kind of like this clown of a movie. We're going to go ahead and give The Nun II a 34.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What a good, bad week we had here.
Yeah, good and bad.
Yeah. This is
heights
fantastic.
of a must-watch and then the lows of an 18.
Well, I mean, they're your new movies, folks. 18 and 34, pretty weak showing as far as the theaters go.
Yeah, and honestly, that's my opinions on why maybe Nun is top. It was a rough week, The dust is settling from the summer, and this is all. It
makes sense. September releases are usually pretty rough. That's what I'm finding. But going back in history, even same deal. Okay, Vin. All right. Wow. Looking at some of these scores, is there anything you want to touch on, add, or you want to roll credits? Where are we at? We got our big Hundy next week.
We got our big Hundy next week. We're watching Major League.
Yes, I cannot wait.
Yeah. We'll continue with Apatow, folks. If you want to pay attention, it's going to be, or watch along, rather, it's going to be Knocked Up. And other than that, thanks for the producers this episode. I love the notes. Thank you both so much for listening and caring about what I say.
Absolutely. And I'll just buttress that again to the producers. We thank you. We thank you so much. We're excited for the next week is going to be a bit of a normal episode. It's hilarious, the movies that we're going to be doing, honestly. Like, what a weird array of films that we're going to do. Yeah. And we'll have some good dialogue of where we come and everything like that, the past 100 episodes. So we're excited about that, folks. I have one note real quick. I know we're running long here.
Do it.
And please tell me if I said this. Like, I can't remember if I made a note of this and said this before. Okay. There is a film I've been meaning to watch again.
Okay.
I know reviews about it, and I just be like, you know what? I should watch this again. And boy, I wasn't hot on this film. You were not hot on this film the first time we both watched this.
Okay.
I saw it after you. I didn't give it a 2 shoes or anything like that.
Yep.
I got to be honest with you. I really, really like Maverick.
Oh,
Top Gun Maverick.
Really?
Yeah. I watched it again, and I was like, whoa. I get it now. I get it. I first watched it. I was very much on your side.
Right.
I thought maybe you were. I probably would have gave it if I was doing percentages 4% higher than you gave it.
Sure.
Or maybe 5% or something like that. Nothing crazy off
Knocking
from you.
into the 70s.
Man, I watched, and then people keep on talking about it. And Quentin Tarantino loves it, and Louis C.K. loves it, and I'm just like, all right, Quentin Tarantino loves it. Let's sit down and watch it again. I freaking
also
loved
two kind
it.
of semi-dubious people.
Watched it again, and I was like, hot damn, this is a great movie.
Yeah. Honestly, I think well, I mean, we did give it the Tom Daly for special effects.
Did it get the Tom Daly?
I think so.
For practical effects.
Yeah, for practical. Yeah.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, I think I was just so sour on the tone of the
cruise.
film.
Tone of the cruise.
Yeah.
It's a sad cruise.
Right, but that does that's a preference thing. Maybe in the right mindset going into it fresh, who knows?
Definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, it still is cookie cutter in a lot of ways, but
yeah.
All right, Ben, thank you so much for watching these films, good and bad, sitting down with us here this week.
It was a good week, though.
Yeah, it was a really good time. I'm excited for next week on our Hundy episode. Again, thanks to our producers this episode. If you want to be a producer, go to thedailyratings.com. If you could, head to the donations tab, and hey, be a producer just like Matt and Brandon this episode. We thank you all so much, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, could you give us a good rating or tell a friend about us? If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you see from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, folks, over the years, but we also want to be independent from all those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.